Welcome to my YouTube channel Wise Whispers, where silence speaks.
Isaac, 64 years old, had always believed that mornings were sacred. At his age, peace was not a luxury, it was something he had earned. The sunlight filtered gently through the curtains of his living room, painting warm golden lines across the polished wooden floor. The house was quiet, just the way he liked it. A cup of black tea rested in his hand, steam rising slowly as he sat in his favorite chair, the same chair his late wife had once teased him about. "Someday," she had said with a smile, "you'll refuse to leave that chair." Almost smiled at the memory, almost, then his phone rang. The sharp vibration cut through the silence like a crack of thunder. Isaac frowned and glanced at the screen. Amina, his son's wife, he rarely heard from her directly. Something felt off, he answered. "Hello." There was no greeting, no hesitation, just a voice, cold, distant, and frighteningly certain. "I'm divorcing your son," Amina said, "and I'm taking your house." A threat wrapped in confidence. For a moment, Isaac thought he had misheard her. At 64, his hearing wasn't what it used to be, but his instincts were sharp. "I'm sorry," he said slowly, placing his tea down. "What did you say?" Amina repeated it, word for word, clearer this time. "I'm divorcing your son, and I'm taking your house." Leaned back in his chair, not shocked, not angry, just still. "On what basis?" he asked calmly. Amina let out a small laugh. The kind that carried arrogance. "The house is in your son's name," she said, "and in the divorce I get half, that includes the house." Isaac's eyes drifted across the room, the walls, the framed photographs, the memories. His entire life stood around him, and someone on the other end of the phone believed she could take it all with a sentence. "You sound very sure," Isaac said quietly. "I am," she replied. "You should start preparing. I'll be coming by this week to discuss arrangements." Then she hung up. Chapter 3. The man who had seen too much. Isaac didn't move for several minutes. He had lived long enough to recognize something dangerous. Not loud danger, but calculated danger. Amina had never respected the house. That much had always been clear. She treated it like a temporary stop, not a home, always comparing, always wanting more, always dissatisfied. But this wasn't dissatisfaction, this was planning. Isaac slowly stood up and walked toward the window. Outside, the garden he had built with his own hands stood in full bloom. He had planted those trees when his son Daniel was just a boy, back when life was simple, back when loyalty meant something. He sighed. "Something is very wrong," he murmured. Chapter 4. The son who didn't know. Isaac didn't wait long. He called Daniel immediately. It took 3 rings before his son answered. Voice sounded tired, worn. Isaac said, his tone steady, "I just received a call from Amina." Then a quiet exhale. "She told you, did me what?" Isaac asked, though he already knew, "that she's filing for divorce." Closed his eyes briefly, "And that she's taking my house." Daniel hesitated. "That's what she believes." Isaac's grip tightened slightly around the phone. "Do you believe that?" he asked. Daniel said quickly, "Dad, I never agreed to that. I don't even understand where she's getting this from." Nodded slowly. "Good, that meant one thing. Amina was acting on assumptions." Us on Lies, Chapter 5. A past decision that changed everything. Years ago, Isaac had made a decision. A careful one. After his wife passed away, he knew that one day his son would marry. And with marriage came shared lives and shared risks. So he did something most people didn't think to do. He consulted a lawyer. He structured his assets carefully. His house was never fully transferred. Yes, Daniel's name appeared in certain documents, but ownership, control, authority, those remained with Isaac. And there was something else, a clause, a quiet, almost invisible clause. If the marriage ended due to manipulation, dishonesty, or intent to exploit, all access to Isaac's assets would be revoked instantly. At the time, Daniel had laughed. "Dad, you're overthinking." Maybe, but Isaac had lived long enough to know hope for the best, prepare for the worst. Chapter 6. The dinner invitation. That evening, Isaac made a decision. He called Daniel again. "Bring Amina over," he said. "Tonight, Dad." "I don't think that's a good idea." "It's the right idea," Isaac replied calmly. "If she wants the house, she should say it in front of me." Was a pause, then Daniel sighed. "All right." Chapter 7. The calm before the truth. At exactly 7:30 p.m. the doorbell rang. Isaac opened the door himself. Daniel stood there tense. Amina stood beside him, confident, unapologetic, almost victorious. She walked in without waiting to be invited. Isaac noticed everything, the way she looked around the house. The way her eyes lingered, not with affection but calculation. They sat down, no small talk, no pretending. Isaac folded his hands calmly. "I believe you have something to say," he said, looking directly at Amina. She smiled slightly. She said, "I do." Chapter 8. The claim. "I'm divorcing Daniel," Amina said, her voice steady. "And as part of the settlement, I'll be taking this house." Shifted uncomfortably. Isaac didn't react. "Interesting," he said. "And what makes you believe you have that right?" Amina leaned forward. "Because legally this house is tied to Daniel, and as his wife I'm entitled to half of everything." Nodded slowly, then he looked at his son. "Daniel," he said softly, "did you ever give her ownership of this house?" "No," Daniel replied immediately. "Never." Rolled her eyes. "It doesn't matter what he says." The law," Isaac interrupted gently, "depends on facts." Stood up, walked to a cabinet, and took out a folder. Chapter 9. The first crack. Isaac placed the folder on the table, opened it, turned it toward Amina. Read, he said. Amina frowned, but she looked. At first her expression remained confident, then it changed slightly. Her eyebrows tightened. That's not right, she said quickly. This must be outdated. It's current, Isaac replied calmly. Daniel leaned in, reading over her shoulder. His eyes widened. Dad, this says you're the sole owner. Nodded. I always have been. 10. The silence that followed the room went quiet, not peaceful quiet, heavy quiet, the kind that comes when reality begins to crush illusion. Amina sat back slowly. She said, there must be another document. Isaac said. He turned another page, and I think you'll find it very important. The room felt smaller now, not because the walls had moved, but because the truth had. Amina's fingers tightened around the edge of the table as she stared at the document in front of her. The confidence that once filled her posture had begun to crack, piece by piece. This doesn't change anything, she said, though her voice had lost its sharpness. Daniel still has rights, and as his wife, read the next page. Isaac interrupted quietly. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. There was something in his calmness, something steady and unshakable, that made it impossible to ignore him. Daniel leaned closer, his eyes scanning the document. His breathing slowed as he read, then suddenly stopped. Dad, he whispered. What is this? Isaac folded his hands in front of him. A precaution, he said. Chapter 11. The clause. Amina snatched the paper and read it quickly. At first, her lips moved silently. Then they stopped, her face drained of color. This is ridiculous, she said, forcing a laugh. This can't be legal. It is, Isaac replied, every word of it. Looked between them, confused. Can someone tell me what's going on? Isaac turned to his son. Years ago, he said, after your mother passed away, I made a decision to protect what we built. Not because I didn't trust you, but because I didn't know who might come into your life. Swallowed hard. And this clause? He asked. Isaac nodded slightly. It states that if your marriage ends due to deception, manipulation, or intent to exploit family assets, then any indirect claim to my property becomes void. The words landed heavily. Amina stood up abruptly. You can't prove any of that. Isaac looked at her, not with anger, but with certainty. I was hoping you'd say that. 12. The truth she didn't expect. Isaac reached into his pocket and placed his phone on the table. For a brief moment, no one spoke. Then he pressed play. A voice filled the room, clear, unmistakable. Amina's voice. Telling you it's simple, the recording said. The old man put everything under Daniel's name. Once the divorce is done, I'll claim my share, and that house alone is worth everything. Froze. His entire body went still, as if the world had suddenly stopped around him. He whispered. The recording continued. I don't care about Daniel. Amina's voice laughed. I stayed long enough. Once I get the house, I'm gone. Audio ended. Silence followed, but this time it wasn't just heavy, it was devastating. Chapter 13. A son's heartbreak. Daniel slowly turned his head toward Amina. His eyes searched her face, not for answers, but for denial, for anything that could prove what he just heard wasn't real. Amina, he said, his voice breaking, tell me that's not true. Didn't respond, not immediately. And in that hesitation, everything was confirmed. It's not what it sounds like, she said finally, her voice shaky. Daniel let out a hollow laugh. Not what it sounds like, he repeated. You just said you don't care about me. I was angry, she snapped. People say things for money, Daniel cut in. For a house, she had no answer because there wasn't one. Chapter 14. The fall of control. Amina grabbed her bag, her movements quick, almost desperate. This is all nonsense, she said. You think this changes anything? I'll fight this in court. Nodded calmly. You're free to try, she pointed at him. You planned this, you set me up. Shook his head gently. He said, I simply listened. That sentence hit harder than anything else because it was true. She had revealed herself. No one forced her, no one tricked her. Her own words had undone everything. Chapter 15. Walking away empty. Daniel stepped aside as Amina moved toward the door, but before she could leave, he spoke. Was any of it real? He asked quietly. She paused, just for a second, then she walked out without answering. All closed behind her, and with it so did the illusion. Chapter 16. The aftermath. Daniel sank into the chair, his hands covering his face. Isaac didn't rush to speak. Some pain needed silence. After a few moments, Daniel looked up, his eyes red. I feel like a fool, he said. Isaac shook his head. He replied gently. You feel like someone who trusted. Let out a long breath. I didn't see it. You weren't supposed to, Isaac said. People like her don't show their intentions. They hide them until they think they've already won. Looked around the room, the house he thought he might lose, the house that had just been saved, not by luck, but by foresight. Chapter 17. A father's wisdom. I should have listened to you more, Daniel said quietly. Isaac smiled faintly. And I should have explained more, he replied. They sat in silence for a moment, then Isaac spoke again. Life will test you, he said. Not just with hardship, but with people. Some will love you, some will use you. The challenge is learning the difference before it's too late. Nodded slowly. I understand now. 18. A new beginning. That night didn't just end a marriage, it revealed truth, it restored boundaries, and it reminded them both of something important, that trust should never come without awareness. In the days that followed, Daniel filed for divorce properly, this time with clarity, with strength, and without illusion. As for Amina, she tried to fight. But without proof, without rights, and without truth. Her case collapsed before it even began. She didn't take the house, she didn't take anything, except the lesson she never wanted to learn. The house was quiet again, but it wasn't the same kind of quiet. Before it had been peaceful, now it was healing. Chapter 19. The weight of reality. The morning after Amina left, Daniel sat alone in the living room, the same room where everything had fallen apart. Sunlight streamed through the window just like every other day, but for Daniel, nothing felt normal anymore. He stared at the empty space across from him. Just a day ago, Amina had been there. Now it felt like she had never truly been. Isaac walked in slowly, carrying 2 cups of tea. He placed one in front of his son without saying a word. Daniel looked up. "I keep replaying it in my head," he admitted. "Every moment, every conversation. I'm trying to figure out when it stopped being real." Sat down beside him. He said gently, "It was never real to begin with, we just believe it was." Lowered his gaze. "That's the hardest part." 20 Picking up the pieces days turned into a quiet routine. Daniel stayed at the house, not as someone hiding from the world, but as someone rebuilding himself inside it. He helped Isaac in the garden, fixed things around the house, cooked meals they hadn't shared in years, small things but meaningful. One evening, as they sat outside under the fading orange sky, Daniel spoke again. "I thought I was building a future," he said, "but I was just being used as a bridge to something else." Nodded. "Now?" he asked. Daniel took a deep breath. "Now I want something real, even if it takes time." Gave a small, approving smile. "That's how you know you've learned." Chapter 21. The unexpected. Week later, the doorbell rang. Isaac and Daniel exchanged a glance. They both knew who it might be. Isaac stood up and opened the door. Amina stood there, but she wasn't the same. Gone was the confidence. Gone was the arrogance. In its place, something quieter, something uncertain. "I just want to talk," she said. Chapter 22. No more illusions. Daniel stepped forward. "There's nothing left to talk about," he said firmly. Amina looked at him, her eyes searching for something. "Sympathy, maybe." "I made a mistake," she said. "I was under pressure. I said things I didn't mean." Remained silent, watching carefully. Daniel shook his head slowly. He replied, "You said exactly what you meant. You just didn't expect to be heard." Truth hit harder this time, because there was no anger in his voice. Just clarity. Chapter 23. The last. "Can fix this," Amina insisted. "We can fix this." Looked at her for a long moment, then he asked the only question that mattered. "If there was no house, no money, nothing to gain, would you still be here?" Amina opened her mouth, but no words came out, and that silence was the answer. Chapter 24. Closing the door. Daniel stepped back. "That's what I thought," he said quietly. Isaac placed a hand on his son's shoulder, not to guide him but to support him. Amina looked between them. For the first time she understood. This wasn't a situation she could control anymore. She had lost not just the house but the trust, and without that there was nothing left. She turned and walked away, this time for good. Chapter 25. Strength in letting go. The door closed once again. But unlike before, there was no tension, no heaviness, just relief. Daniel exhaled deeply. "I think that's the first time I've felt free in a long time," he said. Isaac nodded. "Letting go isn't weakness," he replied. "It's strength when you let go of what was never truly yours." 26. Rebuilding. A life. Weeks passed, then months. The house slowly returned to what it had always been, a place of warmth, of honesty, of real connection. Daniel found new work, something he actually enjoyed. He spent more time with his father, learned more, listened more. And most importantly, he became more aware of people, not suspicious, just wiser. Chapter 27. A new chapter. One evening, as they sat together in the garden, Daniel smiled. "You know," he said, "I used to think success meant having everything: money, a perfect marriage, a big life." Raised an eyebrow. Now Daniel looked around the house, the trees, the quiet peace. "Now I think success is knowing who to trust and who not to." Chuckled softly. "That's a lesson some people never learn." Chapter 28. The legacy that matters. Isaac leaned back in his chair, the same one his late wife had once joked about. He looked at his son not with worry but with pride, not because Daniel had avoided pain but because he had grown from it. "This house," Isaac said slowly, "was never just about walls or ownership." Nodded. "It's about what it protects." Smiled. "Exactly. Final moral: not everyone who walks into your life deserves a place in it. Some come with hidden intentions, but truth always finds its way to the surface. Trust is important, but wisdom is protection. And sometimes, losing the wrong people is the only way to make space for the right life."